excited to hold this workshop with Nethermind, inviting the core dev team and thought leaders in the space, Konrad and Mikolaj. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Hi
Before
there.
kicking off, let me share about the currently open track of WaveHack Global Season 2. We already launched WaveHack Global Season 2, and if you go to our website, you can see the currently open tracks. Let me share the screen for one moment. Yes. And you can see what is open here. And on top of it, there is this Nethermind track. Yeah. And if you go to their page, you can also check these two tracks currently open. Yes. Oh, my internet is a bit slow, but yeah. So please check it out after this session. Okay. Yeah. And Nethermind is offering a total of 10K grants for builders across multiple waves. And so please join us for this opportunity to innovate and showcase your skill set and build your project to complete your chance to win. Okay, so without further ado, let me start by introducing today's speakers. Mikolaj is an engineering manager at Nethermind, and also Konrad is today here. Okay. Okay, let's start then.
I think Konrad, it's off to you.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. So hello everyone, nice to see you all. I see you online, and I hope you will enjoy participating in this action on all these things that will happen. The goal of this is to build enabled distributed apps on Starknet. So it is, I would say, all about the crossing of AI and blockchain, so super hot topic. Everyone is talking about it from various perspectives. I will not give you any specific technical details. There is a lot of materials that you can find. Mostly it is like you should think about it, what is really useful, because when talking about AI and blockchain, there is a lot of buzz also, I would say. So everyone wants to mention both because that sounds good and fancy, but we should think about what blockchain gives us. There was this article from Vitalik at the beginning of the year. It was called The Promise and Challenges of Crypto plus AI Applications. I will just copy paste it on the chat. So if I will be able to, I will see in a second. After maybe I will stop talking, I will copy paste the link. Where the Vitalik was also giving kind of overview what is the real intersection of AI and blockchain. And there were various perspectives, like is it AI is just a player in the game, so you can create a participant that is AI based. The participant of blockchain may be doing some financial operations. That's a kind of let's say obvious integration. Just used AI to traverse a very nice structured data on blockchain and do stuff, or maybe just analyze the stuff, which is also a nice use case. Another level of integration was, as Vitalik was calling it, was AI as an interface to the game. So it was mostly about helping users to use blockchain. Maybe not so fancy, not so super technical, but still pretty useful. Like you can imagine how AI observes our actions, ensure that our behavior is what was our intention. There are no frauds, or just help to onboard to Web3, create some guidelines, maybe some educational things. So this is another kind of how we could approach intersecting AI with blockchain, which is nice because it doesn't maybe require super technical stuff, but still it can be useful really for the whole ecosystem. But those are the like higher level. Obviously, we can go deeper in the stack. So we can create the third level that, as Vitalik has called it, is AI as the rules of the game. So we can think about blockchains. So in this case, Starknet in particular, DAOs, apps that are using AI directly. So kind of AI judges, AI agents that are just really part of the blockchain itself and the apps that are there. So that's something you can also think of. And the final goal is, and that's probably also a lot of talking about it, is like that was all about how to put AI on blockchain, but the thing is what the blockchain can give to AI. And this is all about verifiability. And then we will talk about the centralized AI, how we can make this verifiable and really trustful that the AI is doing what it is intended to do. It is not biased or cheating. So that's the hardest thing, I would say. Obviously, then we could think about decentralized not only inference and usage, but also decentralized training, even more complex topics. You can go to that article for some kind of inspirations. What we expect is probably to have some kind of novelty and really be creative in what you will try to do. Some kind of obvious ideas is, as I mentioned, like use some machine learning models or LLMs. LLMs are the state of the art, so that is really tempting to use LLM somehow. Maybe, I don't know, to traverse really nicely structured Starknet data to create some reports, activity tracking, maybe maybe that's it. Or maybe analyze the Starknet ecosystem itself, which will be still using AI and Starknet, because maybe it will be beneficial for the whole ecosystem to see what's the state of the Starknet itself and what are developers doing. You can even observe GitHub to get the knowledge about it also. So it's only your imagination. Or Cairo development, like Mikolaj will do a Cairo workshop in a moment, but maybe in future Mikolaj will be replaced by AI. Sorry, but that may happen, that the education will change and there will be some human touch here and there, but most of it we will be learning, will be touched by AI. So obviously there is a huge potential here, how we can use AI in education and all that stuff, and also development. Like there's a lot of things happening in the development itself. So maybe some models that will help develop Cairo code. That's also super important. So this is all a bunch of inspirations. I will not bother you with more details. Giving the scene to Mikolaj. If you will have any questions, I will be here for a moment, so feel free to ask. Maybe, yeah, short round of questions, right?
Actually, Hikari, are there any questions appearing
Yes,
already?
not yet. And there is a time lag between YouTube live stream and the Zoom. So if you have any question to Konrad specifically, you can type in the chat in the YouTube comment.
Okay, so
Okay.
maybe Konrad, can you just please stay on, and if those questions come in over the next few minutes, I'll just start with
Right.
with my part, and if
Mm.
any questions appear, we can just stop there and
Yes.
allow you to respond to the questions.
Mm.
So how
Yes.
does that sound? Yeah, let's do that then.
Good.
Yes.
So fingers
Ah,
crossed for crossing AI with Starknet, which requires Cairo. That's why we have Mikolaj.
that's why we have Cairo and the tooling around it. So hi everyone. My pleasure here is to give you a very basic intro into the practice of working with smart contracts on Starknet. As Konrad had said, Cairo is the bloodstream of Starknet. So just for the sake of clarity, Starknet is not an EVM compatible layer 2. It is based on its own stack and its own development toolchain, which I will give an intro of. But let me share first a link and start sharing the screen. Also, there is a set of materials and content related to this workshop, and that's available under this link or the QR code. So you're happy to just use that and connect and get into the repo. The repo does include a 30 variables README, Markdown, and a couple of examples. So I'll pretty much be following the content of the README when it comes to the content I would propose, like presenting and describing. There is a set of prerequisites. So those of you guys who would like to keep up with the session and actually try to replicate hands-on what I will be demonstrating, please follow the prerequisites. It's a set of CLI commands. That's assuming Linux. So that's either Linux Pure or WSL on Windows. And you're happy just to start downloading stuff from there. That's all the tools required, as well as the content required that I will be covering in this workshop. I'll just leave this screen on. Are there any questions to Konrad, maybe, Hikari?
Yes, I think the Konrad is answering in the chat, but there was this
I see.
question. Yeah, I know of Giza SDK to build AI agents that works with Cairo. Are there any other SDKs? Was the question.
Yeah, so my answer was like, it is only one we should probably look at. So yeah, mostly it. It's super emerging area, so waiting for other mature things.
Yeah, thank you so much for your answer.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll just move on. I've also pasted the link to the repo in the chat, and hopefully this can be also published on YouTube.
Yes, we've shared the link in the
Lovely.
comment.
Lovely. Okay, so just to recap, Mikolaj Barwicki, I'm representing Nethermind here, and I will be trying to get you interested in Cairo as a language, but also the actual practical aspects of developing smart contracts for Starknet. So we do assume that you guys have computer programming background, and you have been working with different tool chains already, and I kind of hope you are excited by it. The sheer purpose of this workshop is also to get you excited with Cairo, and give you opportunity to feel these small dopamine shots when you're actually building something or which compiles, and then it actually works in reality. So that's what I will be trying to show you here, and I will try to convince you that doing this on Starknet with the tools available is actually quite fast, quite rapid. So a few words about what Starknet is and then its architecture. Just all the necessary content required to explain why Cairo is there. A little bit about what tools do we have available and the tools which I would recommend to use for starters. There is a lot of learning resources on Starknet and on Cairo already, so I will be giving you links to my favorites, the ones which I feel are good for starters to begin with, and have this way of introducing small concepts or like subsequent concepts in small bite-sized chunks. And there's a set of artifacts and resources available, which I will also show. I will move on to just give you a glance of Cairo. I mean, those of you who know it already, well, that may not be very exciting to you, but I'll just show the basic elements of it, and then I'll move on to simplest smart contracts and how to get your first smart contract out there, first on a DevNet and then to a testnet. And I'll mention some other more advanced development practices as well, hopefully, if I have time at the end of the session. So that's the plan for today. And again, hopefully, those of you who would like to follow this in practice, I hope you've started downloading and installing software. The part which requires compiling of the Starklinks package, that usually takes some time. So the sooner you start, the more likely you are to actually start playing with it together with me. A few words about Starknet itself. Starknet is a rollup based layer 2, where the concept of ZK proof, so zero knowledge proof crypto system, is leveraged to ensure the integrity of the data stored on the layer 2 blockchain, data and transaction state, effectively. But it is still a blockchain, which means that we have transactions. Transactions enter a mempool. The mempool then and the sequencer is formulating the blocks, including the transactions. Transactions are statements which amend the blockchain state or amend the blockchain state. Where this becomes interesting is the moment that when the block is assembled, the block then can be executed, like all the transactions in the block can be executed, and the zero knowledge system, zero knowledge proof system, the Stark system, which is the basic, the foundation of Starknet, it allows us to generate a mathematical proof of the transaction code having been executed. So in this basic logical flow in Starknet, the moment that we have a block formulated, the block then can be taken by what we call a sharp, which is a shared prover module. That module is able to generate the ZK proof of the transactions in the block. That proof then can be stored on the layer 1, which is Ethereum. So as I said, the Starknet is not an EVM compatible layer 2. It is based on Cairo. Cairo is a programming language which is a clever way of or giving the ability to generate the Stark ZK proofs for an indeterministic code. Which means that you're expected to write your code in Cairo. That code then gets compiled into something which is called Sierra, and it's like the intermediary representation of Cairo code. And the Sierra can then be used to generate what is called the Cairo assembly, which is like the very, very low level bytecode of Cairo. And that can be executed, and that also can be used to generate the proof of execution. We may ask a question of why there are 2 steps in there. That's interesting, and that's part of Starknet's history. Cairo effectively is expected to generate this Cairo assembly code. This is this low-level code which can be executed and proven. However, the CASM assembly does also give there's a possibility to generate or to write code which is unprovable. That unprovable code cannot be feasibly used in a layer 2. It cannot be used for a ZK-based rollup mechanism. Therefore, a subset of the CASM assembly has been developed, which is called Sierra, and it is the Sierra which does not give you the ability to write unprovable code. Anything that's compiled from Cairo to Sierra is provable, which means it can be used for Starknet. Okay, I hope that you guys are progressing well with the download of the materials, because I'll move on to what does it actually take to use Cairo for smart contract development. And a side note here, I think it's also worth highlighting. Cairo is a generic language, and Starknet and ZK-based rollup is just one possible application of that language. But you can imagine using Cairo for all sorts of verifiable computations applications. So it's worth to have that in mind, because Cairo is much more powerful than just smart contracts on Starknet. But it is the smart contracts which we'll be focusing on. So this slide here is now a summary of basic fundamental elements of the smart contract tool chain or tool sets available. Cairo is a language which is very close to Rust, as I'll show in a few minutes. And some of the concepts are quite similar to what we have in Rust. For example, Scarp. Scarp is a tool which you can download, you can install, and that is a bundle which includes a build utility. It does include a package manager, and it can allow you to easily reference a shared public package repository for Cairo. That also does include Cairo compiler, the latest version of it, as well as historical versions as well, if you need that for backward compatibility. Scarp is your starting point when you're into command line development. Well, command line toolchains. So Scarp will allow you to build Cairo code, which includes Cairo smart contracts, and it will allow you to get the binaries, the compiled binaries, so the CASM assembly binaries. But then in order to actually get them out into the network, so to get them declared and deployed, I'll mention the declaration and deployment step in 2 minutes. This is where you would use Starkly, which is like the default CLI utility. There is a VS Code extension for Cairo, which is quite neat. It offers syntax highlighting and few other like productivity helps. So the three Scarp, Starkly, and VS Code extension is probably something that could get you easily started with smart contract development on your machine and like in a CLI-based working environment. It's worth also to mention Starknet Foundry, which is even a larger and more complete bundle, which does include development and build tools, as well as testing utilities and test toolpack. So Starknet is pretty much an alternative to the Scarp bundle. Albeit Scarp, I feel it may be potentially sometimes easier to start with than Foundry. To get going with your compiled smart contract, you can either just go straight into the network, so Starknet. Starknet has a testnet, which follows the Ethereum naming. So we have Starknet Sepolia. You can jump onto mainnet, but also you may want to stay local for your development purposes and use a devnet, which is pretty much an emulated Starknet instance. And there is a couple of devnet packages available for Starknet. So if you just want to stay local for your first round of development, you should probably use devnet. Or you can start fast and be rapid and actually just use Remix. Remix IDE is something that is probably known to most of you. It's an online development toolset, which includes editors and code editing utilities. By default, out of the box, it is focused on Solidity and Ethereum. However, or EVM. However, there is a Starknet plugin for Remix as well, which gives you the ability to develop Cairo, to build smart contracts, and to deploy them to either devnets or networks via wallets. So there is a wallet integration as well. And I will be using the Remix plugin on this workshop because it's just very easy to start with. So, learning. There, as I mentioned before, there's a lot of resources available. Because Cairo is slightly resembling the Rust ecosystem, we also have a Cairo book, similar to Rust book. We have Starklinks, which are the analog of Rustlinks from Rust. And Starklinks is a nice artifact, which I will demonstrate in a second. And it is a very neat learning tool to get you on to Cairo development in small bite-sized steps. So it will just allow you to practice and just learn step by step. If you're more into like tutorial-oriented static content, then Starknet, by example, is a nice place to dive into, because that just takes you to basic concepts of smart contract development with Cairo in stages. Similar, Cairo, by example, these two are probably complementary. There is, those of you who know exercism, there is also a Cairo path on exercism, which I recommend to test out. I myself personally, I like exercism a lot, and I was happy to see the Cairo path on it. And there is also a Node Guardians campaign, which is well, Node Guardians is a way of gamifying the Web3 learning experience, and we also have Cairo-oriented campaign being built, designed. This still work in progress, but you can see some of it already. So I definitely recommend you to check these out if you're into Cairo and you're interested in jumping on it. Okay, so I was talking all about Cairo and about Starknet. So why don't we then jump into an example of the Cairo program itself? And as I said, I mean, the syntax of Cairo is very close to Rust. So anyone of you who already have been into Rust should be fairly easily able to jump onto Cairo. You know the syntax. The example here is showing like a basic fundamental main function, which needs to be the starting point of any Cairo program, not the smart contract though. But if you just want to run a piece of computation which you want to prove, you start with main. You'll basically use variables. You define functions. You define traits. You have structs. So all the constructs which you know from Rust and other programming languages. A couple of small quirks, and by the way, the README file on the repo does walk you through like small highlights of Rust syntax and Rust capabilities. But what's interesting here, and that's visible in this example here, the Fibonacci function, or the fib function, and that accepts 3 parameters, a, b, and n, and each of them is marked as being of felt 252 type. Felt is an interesting thing because this is like the basic data type of a Stark ZK proof system, which, and the fact that means that your operations in Cairo are pretty much executed on the felt 252 field elements. That's the felt is an abbreviation from a field element, and you see the felts prevalent in any Cairo code. You use felts to encode strings up to 31 characters in length, as well as use felts to do computation. Apart from that, there's also syntactic sugars, which wraps the felts with like the more widely known traditional integer types, Boolean types, etc., etc. So a lot of the concepts, or a lot of the practices which you know from us will be applicable to Cairo. And that can be played with when using Starklinks. And that's what I would like to demonstrate to you as well. As per the materials that you have on the repo, I have now my terminal up, and I have downloaded the Starklinks, and I have precompiled them as well. That takes a few minutes. So let me show how that works. So that's the entry point to Starklinks. This means that Starklinks is up and ready. To use it, you need to run it with the watch command, and we'll see what happens. Right. So Starklinks is now watching a particular file in the Starklinks folder structure, which it is trying to compile. And the moment it fails in compilation, the output will be shown. The user or the trainee is expected to walk into the particular Cairo file for the exercise and actually make it compile. So even though this inter one did compile properly, still I'm stuck on it. And that's because I need to go in there and actually remove this particular comment from it so that Starklinks can move on. So let me do that. So I'm expected to remove this this line here. But otherwise, the intro one Cairo is a proper Cairo file, Cairo code file with the main function, which is just empty. So let me just update it. And now Starklinks had noticed that I've updated the file, and it will just recompile it, make sure that it is fine, and that it can move on to the next exercise, which is the intro 2 exercise, which is trying to compile now. And it's failing with a particular message. Okay, what's going on there? Let me go in. Okay, so every Cairo file should at least include an entry point. In this case, it would be an fn main function. I'll just make it empty. Saving. Okay. Right, so I've made it, although I have not allowed it to move on, so I'll do just that in a sec. And we are done. So we are now in the variables one, and another set of errors is coming up. Okay, so the first two exercises were really simple, but things start more complex as we go. So let's see what's variables one about. Okay. Right, so this is where you start learning, and you need to actually realize, okay, what's going on and how can I fix this? The compiler shows you something. Starklinks are also willing to help. You can use a hint command, and the hint command gives you small suggestions as to what to do with your exercise. In this case, the problem is that we're lacking the let keyword in front of the variable. Let me do just that. Will it compile? There you go. And so on and so on and so forth. I found that there are 50 plus, I think, at the moment exercises in Starklinks. I highly recommend playing with it if you're into Cairo. And that's where I will leave it at that. Anyone willing can just do it on your own. I'll move on because that was Cairo. Cairo's language. But now let's talk about writing smart contracts in Cairo. And this is an example of the simplest, most basic, minimal smart contract code. So apart from like the basic Cairo syntax, we also start seeing the annotations which are specific to start smart contract writing. So the implementation, the module which implements the smart contract is expected to be labeled with the Starknet contract annotation. And the only thing which is mandatory in the smart contract is its storage structure. So which is like the bundle wrapping the storage, the set of variables and state which the particular smart contract is going to include. That needs to be annotated with the hash storage annotation, and that's really it. So that code would compile, although it probably isn't very interesting. So why don't we then try to add some functionality to our smart contract? Okay, so something more interesting now, a constructor. Okay, so what we see here is, well, we still see storage, but the storage now has an element in it, which is called names, and it is a map of an address to a felt. So that's basically pretty much a key value mapping, which you can add key value pairs to. And there is also a function which appeared with a constructor annotation, and that function is the smart contracts constructor. So the smart contracts entry point during its deployment. During a smart contracts lifecycle on the blockchain, you need to at some point deploy your smart contract code, which means that you're creating an instance of the smart contract on your blockchain, and that instance may need to be initialized. So there must be a way of specifying like the set of logic, the set of instructions which need to be executed during smart contract deployment. That's the constructor. In our case here, the example does include the first initial key value pair of an address and name for clarity, and that first pair will be written to the names, which, as I remind you, is a map in storage. And that code would execute during the smart contracts deployment. There is one quirk which may not be obvious to newcomers into Starknet, which has to do with how do you actually put your smart contract out into the network. Before you're actually able to deploy the contract to create its instance, you need to first declare the contract to your blockchain, to your network. The declare step is necessary because it is in the declare step where you actually put the smart contract code on the network, and that code is called a contract class. And only once you have the class declared to your blockchain, you can then deploy instances of that class onto your blockchain as well. And it is the instances which will have state, not the class. And you can have many instances from the same class. And that logic is then that approach, the approach of annotations and just adding smart contract specific elements to your code. That's pretty much followed when you're adding other elements to it. So apart from the constructor, you may want to also, probably should want to add the public interface of your smart contract. So you would need to define the operations that your smart contract supports. There are two categories of operations. There are state changing operations, and they are read-only. There are read-only operations. The way to distinguish them in Cairo is that your read-only operations will refer to the actual contract state snapshot, The snapshot, the @ sign here is a syntax nuance of Cairo that represents a read-only copy of the actual data structure. So any operation that you allow on the contract state snapshot is perceived as considered a read-only operation, whereas anything that will amend state will need to refer to a reference to the actual contract state structure. So in this case, we have two state-changing functions and we have one read-only function. What's important here is that to define or to allow the programmer to define the interface or the ABI, Cairo and its Starknet package requires you to define, or actually it doesn't require you, but it does encourage you to define a trait as a trait also in Rust, which does require you to specify the operations supported by your contract code. So the interface you flag with the Starknet interface annotation, and it just declare the behavior of your contract. Whereas in the contract module itself, you provide the implementation of this trait, where you actually specify the code for your methods or for your functions, and you wrap this all or flag this via the ABI annotation, which is then used by the compiler and the toolchains to actually generate and extract the ABI, so the application binary interface from your smart contract. And it is the ABI which is visible on Starknet, and it is the ABI which you can also view in blockchain explorers, for example. So that itself, that code here that we see, should be enough to actually build something and deploy it to Starknet. So let's play. Let's see how that actually works. And this is where I will stop the presentation, and I'll just move on to the repo. And at this point, we have the Remix intro, where the repo gives you a link which you can use to just open the Remix IDE. Just give it some time to load the Starknet plugin. The plugin will also attempt to load the Cairo workshop content into its workspace. And here it is. So all the code samples I've now loaded into Remix. And let's start simple. Start simple with like a very basic smart contract, which doesn't even have a constructor. It does have a very basic ABI with just one read-only function. What you need to do to compile, you just select the file and you can just compile it. The compilation is happening on the plugin's backend, so you don't really need to install anything on your machine. And here's the result. So this is the 42 class contract class, which has a hash and it can be identified by this hash. But it is now only available to us in Sierra and Chasm format in the plugin or in Remix. What do we need to do to actually get this out there in Anger? You need to deploy it somewhere, right? You need to deploy it, first declare, then deploy it. And we have a couple of options in the plugin. One of the options is to use a remote devnet. So actually the plugin does include also a remote devnet instance with a number of like test accounts. And you can just select one, and let's see if we can declare the contract. And the Remix console does give you the outputs or the results of all the declarations or all the operations. Note that declare was an operation which changes blockchain state, so it is a transaction. Same goes to deploy. Deploy allows us to deploy the the actual smart contract. It has a void empty constructor, so no parameters are required for it. And here it is. So the result is that we have successfully deployed a contract to DevNet under this account, and we can now interact with it. There is a very basic function read-only here, which I will call, and I can call it from the plugin. And I got a two-way, which is hex 442. So that's the basic flow, right? And the same applies to more complex contracts, like, for example, a counter, which is, I believe, taken from the Starknet by example tutorial set. And that does have a simple constructor and does have a simple ABI, which allows you to modify the counter, which is maintained by this contract, and it allows you to read from it. So, can we compile it? Sure we can. Right, and I can now declare, and once declared, I will be able to deploy and create a contract instance. But this time, let us go further and let us actually jump to testnet, and we will do it via a wallet. You need to have a wallet application to create an account, so like identity on Starknet, and you need to have a wallet application to execute transactions using your account. So the plugin will integrate with the wallet, but we need to do some prep work in the wallet itself. Me myself, I'm mostly using the Bravos wallet, and I have a fairly fresh Bravos setup created, but I will also walk you through, and just to give an idea of how simple it is to just start from scratch. So I'll just start with, I should be able to, just bear with me. Let's create a new account from scratch. So I'll just add the account. It's a new account, and what's worth noting is that the account is also a smart contract for Starknet, which means that after you generate the account, you actually need to put it on Starknet, which means you need to deploy it. But in order to deploy it, you actually need to have funds for it, which means that since I am now working on Sepolia, and I'll just make sure I do, I'm working on the Starknet Sepolia network. I am able to use a faucet to add some stuff, some cash to my account. Let me just do that. It's a web page where I will paste my account address. I prefer Stark as my coin, and I'll just send my request to it. So right now the request is being sent to the Starknet testnet Sepolia to get my account funded, and I should see it ready within literally a few seconds. And in case this for some reason doesn't work on this wallet instance, I'll just give it some more time. I'll just try again. Another faucet instance. Okay, right. So there seems to be failing for me on this account for some reason. I'll not try to debug it right now. I'll just move to the other preloaded account. Because if I had Stark on this account, I would be then able to jump into the account declaration step. And once that is done, from this point on, I could use my account on Starknet. So I'll select my other account then. That one has been pre-funded. And since this is already up, I'll just move to it in the plugin. So in my environment, I select wallet and I connect to Bravos. Just make sure that this is the Bravos account that I'm using. This 48E4F, that's the one. Good. And fingers crossed, because I'll try now to declare. Actually, that's interesting, and that's what is worth noting also. I've been notified that this particular contract with ClassHash has been declared on this network, but I'll modify the contract a little bit and compile it again just to show you the declare step. So as you see, the declare step has been approved via the wallet. And the declaration has been completed. This is now on testnet. You could actually use a block explorer like Voyager to see it on testnet. So let me then deploy it as well. And the deploy process is in progress, waiting for the deploy transaction to complete. And that has been succeeded and accepted on L2. The plugin will show you the transactions executed, so you have a trace of a track of the transactions, and you can actually even view those transactions on Voyager. So it's all happening live, right? It's all happening on the network, guys. And basically, this is how you would use the plugin to just carry on with your development on Starknet from the browser, purely via a web page, and it gives you access to most of the functionality of the toolchains. There is one caveat, though not caveat, but there are still a few things which plugin doesn't support. One of them is unit testing, because in Cairo, you can actually follow the approach of Rust when trying to write unit tests, and you can basically define and annotate tests. In order to execute them, you would need to use a command line tool, and that's what I will also like to demonstrate. So I have my Cairo workshop content in here as well, and conveniently, this whole repo is also following the Scarb toolchain format. So it is a Scarb project, which is very similar to Cargo, which means that I can use the Scarb command line to build. And that has finished. And I can do the same or similar to test. And these are the 4 unit tests for the counter smart contract example, which are showing up as green, which is great. And they also even give you an estimated gas usage, which is also interesting for testing and smart contract development purposes. And I'm conscious of time. That's about it when it comes to the basics of the smart contract development, and that's about it of what I wanted to demonstrate and show. Guys, I hope that is useful to you. I hope you have had and you will have fun with Cairo, and I hope this is helpful for your attempt at the hackathon. So I'm happy to try and answer any questions if there were any online, Hikari. Otherwise,
Yes.
we can take them offline.
Thank you so much, Mikolaj. And if you have any question, please do let us know by commenting in the YouTube live stream comment place. Yeah. And before ending this session, lastly, as we mentioned in the beginning, there are 2 tracks opening from Nethermind currently.
Are there any questions online?
I'm not seeing any question coming in.
Okay.
If there is no question, yeah.
I'll just then stop sharing. And that was it. It was a pleasure to show you the Cairo development practices. And again, I hope that's useful. If there's any questions appearing afterwards, Hikari, I'm happy to try to take them offline and respond them asynchronously.
Yes.
Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for hosting
Thank you so
me,
much,
us,
Mikolaj.
me and Konrad, and till next time.
Yes, sounds great. Lastly, let me share the screen. So as Mikolaj also mentioned in his workshop, currently there are 2 tracks open by Nethermind. One is to complete thinking in Cairo campaign on Node Guardians, and the other one is to build AI-enabled Dapps on Starknet. Yes, and if you have any sort of question, you can always reach out to us or Nethermind's official channels through Discord or on our end, Discord as well as the X. So yeah, please do let us know if you have any problem facing while you are building. Yeah. Okay. Oh, I think there is one question coming in. So asking, there are several frameworks of ZKP, but I've heard Cairo was a great framework compared to other frameworks. Can you explain more why it's great compared to Zircon, Plonky, or Halo?
It's hard for me to answer that question because I'm very bought into Stark and Starknet, so I feel like I'm not objective here. I'm confident that there are objective comparisons of various both ZK proof systems as well as the provable computation platforms. I'll hold back from answering that question. From my perspective, my own opinion is I really do appreciate how Cairo itself as a language does incorporate Stark and turns it into like a really generic provable computation programming language. That gives you huge power over various applications or various ways of of leveraging or using the verifiable computation concept as a whole. Another aspect is that when it comes to the proving efficiency, Starks and Cairo itself are now being enhanced with this next generation proving language, which proving mechanism, which is called STU, which is actually expected to increase the velocity and efficiency of proving computations by 2 orders of magnitude. And the code name of this project is STWO, STWO. That is expected to be rolled out into Spotlight within a couple of months, and the improvement that it is going to bring is going to be huge.
Thank you so much for the answer. Yeah. If there is no question left.
If there's anything else, Hikari, I'm happy to answer offline and via Discord, and
yes.
We will be in touch throughout the hackathon.
Sounds great. Yeah.
Thank you so much again.
Thank you so much. Yeah, everyone, thank you so much for joining us, and see you at our other events soon. Yeah, and please do let us know if you have any sort of a problem while you're building, and let's keep building. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.